Hey, I'm JD. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and please hit like. And I'm wearing this little Harley Davidson thing I got years ago just to try to look young and cool. Is it working? Let me know if it's working. Let me know if it isn't. The only problem I have is my glasses are too big, which makes me look like an old guy. They all have these big glasses, and I got these because they see through them so well. So today I'm going to, first, I'd like to thank everybody out there who's subscribing to my YouTube shorts. So I decided to take my long form videos will be watchmaking and watch repair, maybe a little music, maybe a little magic, who knows. And my shorts videos are all comedy. I love comedy. I did stand up when I was very young in university for a very short period of time. And I love comedy, and the shorts are providing me a kind of an avenue to express my comedic background, and I love doing those shorts clips. I just put a couple of Archie Bunkers on there that are hilarious. And I'm catering to my crowd, okay? I don't think 20-year-olds know who the hell an Archie Bunker is. What is an Archie Bunker? What? Jesus, the meathead sitting in my seat again. So that's my little Archie there. So anyway, today I'm going to make a balance staff because I failed miserably at repivoting the balance that I was working on. Yesterday it was a platform balance for an old British platform balance for an old British, I'm in a loop, platform balance for an old British carriage clock. So carriage clock. So anyway, those balances are the only good news here is that the pivots on the end of those things are 0.19 millimeters. That's massive from a pivot perspective. I'm usually working on pivots that are 0.12 to 0.09. Oh me, oh my. That's my Letterman. So so I'm used to working on those pivot sizes. So 0.19. Go. So did I fire 5 shots or 6? Well, in all this confusion, I kind of left count, kind of forgot myself. But being that this is a .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, it'll blow your head clean off. Do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? So I had to do that. Anyway, so I'm going to make a balance staff. It should be a lot easier than making a balance staff for my typical, like a Hamilton size 16 pocket watch. I'm not going to talk my way through making this balance staff, but I will record it as I'm making it, and I will speed up the video so you don't have to watch through all of that, and I may narrate after. So I'm going to try to make the video like a 15-minute video on how to make a balance staff, even though making this balance staff is likely going to take me probably 2 hours at least, and then I've got to fit it and test it and stuff. So let's have a look at what I'm going to work on. So this is the balance here for this particular platform watch here, platform balance. So and this here is lower pivot screwed. Well, the whole thing is screwed. And I said hairspring is bent at stud, so I got a hairspring issue as well. And here is the platform part of the platform balance. There we go. Come on, focus. Focus is not just a shitty car, okay? So it's got 2 cap jewels. This is the way they used to do it back in the day. They screwed these things in on top, and it gives you a kind of a little tiny bit of the ability to adjust the depth of the pivot, but not a lot. So this is kind of what it looks like without the balance cock on it. And it's old. It's old, Jerry. I'm not going to refresh this because vintage is, someone said yesterday in a clock and watch meeting that if you do this, you lose about $10 off the value of a clock. That was a joke. Nobody seems to want clocks anymore. Anyway, this has got the pallet fork here. This needs cleaning, and I'll examine the lower jewel and the upper jewel. But I'll probably also use my pivot gauges and look at that lower pivot gauge, although it should be a 0.19 like the upper pivot gauge. In this case, the balance staff itself, I look at the balance cock itself, and I look at the upper pivot. Let me see if I can zoom in here. Can this zoom? It should be able to zoom. What is with zooming today? Zooming does not seem to work. There we go. So you can see here that the upper cap jewel here is crushed, which is no good at all. And if I look down through the jewel here, I'm assuming that I'll also have a problem here with the jewel. It kind of looks good from a distance, but I bet you under a microscope this jewel is also toast. Which means I got to figure out how to put a new jewel in there. So the only good thing about these carriage clocks is that they always work in the same direction. Basically the platform part of the balance is always sitting flat, which is good. So you don't have to worry about this thing running upside down, which is even better. So I don't know how the heck this thing got cracked unless somebody just punched the top of it and cracked it. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to make a new balance staff. The first thing I need to do in making a new balance staff, of course, is to remove all of the components of the staff. Let's have a look at the staff for a second. Here's the balance. Take this out. I'll use that tool in a few seconds. So there's the balance here, and this balance has got, it's pretty straightforward. I'm having a hard time with this particular camera right now. Focusing. Come on, baby. There. I think the main problem is that I have to go off to the side of the camera here when I'm doing this, and it's not seeing the focus. But there's the balance there. There's the hole that I made so far to repivot it. But you know what? This metal was super hard, and I had a real problem trying to get this thing working properly to drill this out. You saw that in yesterday's video. The balance is a pretty simple balance, so I just have to kind of copy this balance staff so that it works perfectly and I don't have big issues with this whole thing. So it's a little bit of a pain, but I think it'd be even more pain for me to continue trying to drill this hole and get this whole thing done than making a new balance staff. So I'm going to go ahead and make myself a new balance staff. I did the measurements already. I may want to measure the length of that pivot again, but I know the overall length of the balance. And I want to make sure that I use this sample balance as my, or this balance as my sample. When you cut the balance staff, you're always cutting the top part first anyway, this side here. Oh, where am I? Where am I? Yeah. You're always cutting this side of the balance first where the hairspring is first, and then you're actually graving off a lot of material on the back side until you snap it off. And it's pretty high up. That's the only thing I can see is that the shaft where the roller table is, it goes up pretty high. So I'm just going to have to stake off or punch off the roller table and then punch off the balance. I don't think I'm going to see if this is riveted at all. It may be friction fit or riveted. It doesn't matter that much for this, but we'll see what happens. So this is going to have a brand new balance made by moi. So I was also going to give a lecture at the Ottawa Clock and Watch Collector Society. It should be called Clock and Watch, even so it says watch and clock, but most guys there are clock dudes. So, and there's a bunch of us that are pocket watch and watch types, but mainly pocket watch types. And I was going to give a lecture on how to make a balance staff and all the tools and bring my portable lathe with me. I did that years ago to a selected audience, about 3 people, but I think that would be interesting to a lot of people. As they see the lathe, they see the tools you need, they see all of that stuff, and they can watch me kind of cut the material and things like that. So I might do that, but I'd have to figure out how to connect this camera to what I'm working on the desk and have it projected up on the wall. So that's an idea for the folks of the Ottawa Watch and Clock Collectors Society. I don't think they're really collectors, they're all repair dudes. So there you go. A lot of smart people there too as well. We did a lecture a little while back on, and the lecture was on pendulums. I think I'm like over juking my audio here. So the lecture was on pendulums. Let me stop this. Yeah, I'm going to have a lot of red audio. Anyway, the lecture was on pendulums, and it went really well. Blair gave the lecture, excellent lecture, things I didn't know. Like it doesn't matter what the weight is in the bottom. It actually matters what the distance is from the pendulum ball on the bottom, or bob, or whatever it's called, weight to the top. It's that distance and the moment and all kinds of other stuff that determines its rate. So anyway, enough jabbering. Let's get on with this job. Quick watch check before I start. I'm wearing a Citizen Eco Drive, and this is the Blue Angels chronograph. So the Blue Angels chronograph. It's kind of cool, man. It is not an analog watch, but it has a lot of coolness in it. So there you go. It works as a chronograph. Set it back, press that button, resets it, press it again, and then I got my seconds going again. So it's synchronized with the Dayton, Ohio signal, so I get perfect time. So I lied. The first thing in actually adjusting this is to punch out the old roller table. Now I know this is 90 degrees to the balance, but I'll reset all that later on. And I hate to be using a punch on a nice pivot end of a balance staff, but what the hell, right? I need a hammer. So it's hammer time. I can see where I put my hammer. Where did I put my hammer? I don't know where the hell my hammer is. Oh, I got my hammer right here. I just saw my hammer. It's live action video here. So the front end and the back end of this I'll be chatting, and the balance staff cutting I probably won't. Here's my hammer. Make sure that these are tight. When I punch the balance staff off, I tend to use this side of the hammer because it's got more of a shocking force. And then you put this is a stake for this little tiny device. This is a pretty cool balance staff puncher outer device. And you just kind of put that over the balance like that, and I just rotate it to make sure I know that it's sort of in the right position. You look down like that and see if it's looking good, and it is. And then I just need to punch it. But before I punch it, well, I actually don't have to worry about the bottom part. Usually I would take the yeah, look at that. This is the side actually with the hole in it. So I could probably use a different type of punch. No, I'll use this one. It doesn't go over the pivot this time. It just goes into the hole here. So I can just put it over the top of that and then punch down. I'm not too worried about the pivot on the other side, although if I punch down and it bends that pivot, then I won't have a good sample, right? So I might as well do this. Take a piece of Rodico out of your collection of Rodico, and just put that piece of Rodico right underneath the balance staff like that. That way when this punches down, it hits the Rodico and not all the other stuff. Now I could use a different stake for this because it's basically trying to be centered here. So I'm just going to... That work? Didn't work. Look at that. The roller table kind of riding up here, so just kind of crazy, but it did work. Just keep hitting it until it works, eh? And the very end of it is a little widened, I think, because of when I had it in the lathe, it would have widened the end of this just a tad, eh? So that's not good. I wonder if I can just pinch that off. I'm not sure. I don't want to put undue stress on this, so I just twist it a bit until it rolls off. That's it there. It just rolled off, and there's my roller table, and it's not broken or cracked or anything else, because then I'd have to make a roller table. That's not good. So I'll put that in here, and I'm going to use that for fitting it later on. And then I have to look at the balance staff to see if it's riveted or not riveted. So this is the balance and balance staff. You can see how that looks there, and I can tell you right now, it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't look like there's a rivet on there. It's hard to say. But now I have another tool I use for actually safely taking off the balance staff. So let me grab that tool. So every time you get a watch job, you end up with a different tool. I find that I've had to procure a boatload of tools over the years just because I need to do different types of work each time. And I usually refer back to my manuals again, just to make sure I'm doing it properly. But here's the tool here, these two things here, and these are jammed in with the staking set, and I'll show you how that works. And I have to punch this staff out, and it's going to be punched out from the top, from this side. So I've got to make sure that this stake here goes over the pivot. I can do that right now. That's before I get this thing all set up here. Hang on. Okay, that's not working. That one is not going over the pivot. Now I'll check this one here, and hopefully this one is going over the pivot. That's a bit better, but it's still not going over the pivot. You just rotate this. It's kind of strange that it wouldn't go over the pivot, because I've used this particular set a million times, Jerry, a million times. So I want that to go over the pivot, and I have to see whether maybe there's dirt or something in there, because I don't want to have to punch this out and for this not to go over the pivot properly. So I may have to get a different balance staff removing device. Well, because I can't get this stake over the top of that pivot, I'm going to stake up the balance staff and cut it out. So you can do that as well. You just have to be very careful so you don't cut the arms. And I'm just going to do a cutaway of the actual balance from where it's seated. So that should work, no problem. All right, just setting my lathe up here, and I need to have some, see if that's working here. This is a Bowley lathe, very nice lathe. I've used this one primarily for cutting balance staff. So what I need to do is find the collet here to stick the balance in so I can cut away the rivet on the balance, given that there's a rivet. And it looks like this fits into a 6. And I just need to chuck this up. So it's kind of a up chuck. And these are lathe collets or chucks or whatever you want to call them, but lathe collets. There we go, that's in there now. And I just need to, I don't have to worry about this thing rotating perfectly, because I'm just cutting away the rivet. So this should stick in here like this, and again, the only reason I'm doing this is I need to make the hole in that other device I have a little better. So here I just need to line up the tool rest here so it's lined up to allow me to work on this collet. I have black tape on it here, and this is so when I look down it's not going to reflect back on me and cause me issues. So I'm just trying to line this thing up so that I can get access to that rivet part and try to cut that off without making a mess. Right now, I did a good job yesterday. I took all of my gravers and I sharpened the crap out of them. So this should allow me to get in here and just cut that rivet off. So let's try that out. All right, this is me cutting off the rivet. See how well this works. I tried using my ×10 area loop and it's just way too close. I don't know what happened there. Let me just spin this for a second and see if it's not going to bite me. It is kind of wobbly, but what the hell, right? There, I've taken a little bit of material off here, and I don't know whether that'll do or not, or whether I need to cut more or what. There's a little bit of a guessing game happening here. Oh, that's on pretty tight still. I want to get right up there and have a look at what that rivet looks like to make sure I'm not damaging anything here. Yeah, I'm kind of cutting on the inside of it and not the rivet itself. I'm being very careful, I think. I'm gonna think. So I need to get a little bit further outside here. I think that's good right there, and I may just have to knock it off if this doesn't come off. right? But I've taken the rivet away, so it should provide less resistance in actually removing the balance. And if I look at this, I'm seeing what's rotating here. Yeah, so let me just, I got to remove this here. I've cut away the rivet, but I want to make sure that that I don't cut the arm of the balance. That's the critical part, right? Because then if you do that, you've got no balance, no material on the arm to allow you to do the job properly. So that should do there, and I'm going to try to punch this out now. So to punch this out, I just want to have this aligned properly. So I use my centering stake to start off with, and I think this is the hole right here. Now that doesn't go all the way in flat, but this one does. So I just use my centering stake again and find the tip of that pivot right there. I really wish that would. I really wish that the that other device would work, which means I would have to try to drill out those holes a little bit more, and I don't know. This doesn't seem to want to do that, so I will very carefully punch this and see what happens. So that's that there. So you just raise that up again and then lower this to center and then tighten that up on the staking set and then put that back. Make sure it's over the right one. And then you got to pick a stake that will go over there nicely. Now the stake I fit is going to go right over to the base, right? And so I want to knock that straight down. What I don't want this to do is bend. So see if I can do this without bending it. Perfect. So all I did was weaken the rivet by doing what I did, right? And now when I punched it, it didn't bend the arm of the balance. That's the important part, right? So you don't want that to happen. And now I've got to go recover that balance that I put in there, and you can do that with a small piece of Rodico. So you just reach in with the Rodico, push down a little bit, and that should grab the balance, or just basically turn the whole shoot and match upside down. Doesn't seem to want to grab the balance. Sometimes it'll fall right through, but I'm just going to do this. See if I can knock this out. Nope. What you don't want to do is lose the balance. So let me look, our balance staff, so let me have a look for it. And what happened is when I moved it, it landed on my leg. There it is there. So there's the balance, and I'm just going to stick that onto a piece of Rodico right now so I don't lose it. So there we go. That's the balance staff, and that's what I'm going to just recreate on this lathe. So the first thing I need to do is find a piece of blued steel. That's the width of the widest diameter. And I always put the balance and the balance staff, and usually the roller table, I'll grab that in a second, but it's stored over there. So I usually put all those in the same container, so when I'm doing the test fitting, I can just move those back and forth. I got all this stuff on my lap right now, but what I want to do is measure with a deuxième gauge, which is really cool and easy to use, the width of this, the widest part of this balance staff, and that's what I'm going to use to establish the piece of blued steel that I have. So here's the deuxième gauge here. So I just need to go down thing on this thing here like that and say, okay, what is that width? And that is, if you look on this side of it here, on the end it's running about 16 or 17. But what I'm going to do here is flip my glasses over, do this again, like this. Make sure I'm hitting the widest part of that balance. Look on the other end here, and I've got around 18.5. So an 18.5 on the deuxième gauge. If you look at that gauge there, 18.5 is around, right around there. So that's on the gauge, and that's that width there. So I'm looking at
18.5, so I look at my blued steel and see what I got here that might be that width. Just grab a piece and see where it sits here. So I want to get close to it. So if it's, so this is too small. This is running at about 15, so I'd like to get a bigger piece. So I may have to go to bigger chunks of blued steel than that. That's a pretty big piece, but it's not big enough. So I just grab another piece here, measure this, have a look at the Deuxième gauge, and that's 14. That's not even as big as the other one. Luckily I got lots of blued steel. So I grab this piece here. I got a rubber band around it, which means I've used it before for a balance staff. And this one is 19.5, so that's perfect. So that's what this is showing right here, 19.5, almost 20, and that's it right there. So this piece should work nicely. I parted it on this side the last time. Yep, I can see that. And I can use, usually I can stick the whole darn thing into the lathe and not have to figure out where I'm parting it here. So it just depends how true it runs. But as you're cutting it, it'll run more true as you're cutting it. So I'm going to do that and make sure I put my balance staff back in that little container again and take off this rubber band that's turned into dust. It's been on there way too long. It's basically crumbling into nothing land. So I'll just do that, get rid of this rubber band, and be right back. And while I'm here, I'll pick the collet for this particular staff, and I'll be chucking it up on this side here. I took the rubber band off, but I used a piece of sandpaper to get rid of the goom. And this is a 16, nope, 17 maybe, nope, 18 maybe, nope, doesn't like it. I'm going to go all the way to 20 here really fast. So 20 fits. Does 19 work? 19 almost works. So it looks like it's going to be 20. So the collet size is going to be 20. It's not too bad. You don't want it to be tight going in and out. You just want it to be a little bit loose. And then the collet will grab onto the piece of metal. So we'll switch the collet out and get ready for cutting. Of course, the first thing I want to do with this piece of metal here is to face it off properly. And I don't want to bend it at all as I'm filing it. So I'm just going to make it short to face it off and just grab this like that. A little bit more. Perfect. Now I want to see how much blued steel I need sticking out here to make this staff. So I look at the tip of the staff, add a little bit, and then I look at where the pivot would be on the other side and just bring it back a bit. So that should do right there, because I do want enough room to part it, so I may pull it out just a little bit more here, just so I have enough room to part the metal. Yeah, right about there is good. And then I tighten that up and make sure it's spinning nicely. It's centered nicely. Yeah, that's perfect. I want that to be fairly tight now so it doesn't lose its position. You can also take a long piece of pegwood on this, and you can basically ride it on the top or bottom here and see if there's movement on the end here and how much movement there is. And that'll let you know whether this thing is on or off from center. And I can't see any movement at all, so that's really good. So what I'm going to do then, the next thing I'm going to do is I need to get my gravers in the right position here for working on this. So I want to be able to be close enough that I don't have any chatter, and high enough so I've got the right angle, cutting angle. So that's not high enough there. So that's a good level for no chatter there, but I need to raise up the tool rest here just a tad, and it needs to be perfect, and you try to align the face of the tool rest with the metal so you don't have any problems. You want to be just a little bit lower when you're cutting, so this probably needs to go down just a little tiny bit. Not much, but just a little tiny bit, like that. And that might do right there for the first cut. And I'll just tighten the base here, like that. And then I want to rotate this just a bit here so it's conforming with the, basically being parallel with this. So this has got a reverse thread on it to tighten it, by the way. So there's a reason for that reverse thread, and I couldn't tell you what it is. So that's good there. And now if I want to make some marks here. So the first thing I need to do is set this up so it's right beside the part. So what I do is take a piece of Rodico. I'll transfer it to this Rodico here, and I want to set it up on the tip so I can actually see the balance staff and see that piece of metal at the same time, and then set it up. So I stick that onto the tool rest here, or sorry, the tip over tool rest. Stick it on somehow so it's the right height. It's a little bit too high there, like this, and then I can make some basic measurements after I get this stuck on and I get the part close enough. So I'm just going to take this off. I don't want to lose the part, by the way, because when you're doing this, sometimes it's a bit of a pain, but you don't want you don't want to be hunting for balance staffs on the floor. So sticking it on here is a bit of a pain. So there we go. And you want to get your fingers in to stick it on properly. So I can move the tool rest out of the way, thank God. And then stick this on here like that. And I just want to move this around so it's kind of in the relative position that I want this to be at for cutting the balance. And that there is probably pretty good there. I'm leaving myself some extra pivot space on the end, so it's like that. That's not too bad. Now I can make some general marks here. So I pull this back up like this, and then you want to just make some lines here. So the first mark I want to make is where that first cut needs to be, right? And that's way down the other end here. So I'll just make that mark here on the blued steel. There we go. And then, so that I'll cut all the way up to that mark here. And the widest diameter would be where the balance goes on. So the balance is the first widest diameter, and then the second one is the hairspring. So I need to just cut material off this right up to this position here, and then remeasure. So I'll do that. I can do that with this particular graver. That's a lot of material to be cut off, but it's necessary because of the size of the widest diameter of that collar. So what I like to do is cut deep, so I can cut it to start off with cut it fairly deep so I absolutely know where that first level is. Let me just get in here like this. And you got to make sure you're getting nice curled pieces with your graver. And I'll leave a little extra on the end where it stops. I won't try to cut it where it's stopping, right? And clean off your graver every now and then. I've got this thing on the bottom here that allows me to do that. So I'll do that, and I'll try to get down to that first position, and I'll have to measure what that is in a few seconds, right? You can pre-measure that, by the way, but I didn't bother this time because I can eyeball how close I am to it. But I do have to remove a lot of material here, so I'll be no need to show you me removing material. This will be boring as hell. So I hold my gravers kind of at a bit of an angle, so they're not absolutely flat, so it doesn't catch the material. It's kind of just a bit of an angle, and they're all carbide gravers, so they're pretty high-end gravers. They should cut nicely, and you just monitor the speed you're cutting. You don't need to spin too fast to cut properly. They need to just be sharp, that's all. If for some reason your gravers seem to be getting dull, just get your plate out and start sharpening. So I'm just going to work on this and come back after this is down to a reasonable level. The other thing I do that's worth noting is I always taper from the tip going forward. That way when I go to fit the part, and the first part I'm going to fit is the balance itself, then I can go like this and see how close I am to fitting the balance. And then when I fit it, I can just start tapering it right up to this, where I make the mark, right? So that's the best way of doing it. You don't even need to measure the diameter of the balance if you're doing it that way. So I'm not sure who taught me that, but probably just over time I've figured this out. So I think these gravers are very magnetic as well. So now I have the balance fitting on the tip here, and I've got a bit of a taper. It's not like an M3 taper, it's probably a little greater than that. So what I want to do now is remove material from this point here, moving upward as I go towards this line right here, right, which is the first part where this balance will rest, right? So I want to remove material and then walk this thing up until I get really close, and then I'm going to be playing the game of micromillimeters as I do that. So that's what I will do. And it took a little time to get this up, but not too bad. So I know that it'll fit. It'll work right up to this point here. So I want to remove material from here moving forward. And what I do when I do that is I watch I end up watching the top of this metal, because I can tell whether it's flat or not. I can tell what kind of angle there is on the top of that. So I'm having fun cutting here. I got the wrong angle to cut or something. So there we go. And I'll flip to a basically a different graver later on that'll give me a better cut. There we go. It's all about getting the right angle on the graver too. And when I do this, I'm going to cut it right up to where I think that balance will end up, and then I fine tune the end cut. So I end up going right up to, right up to around here, I think, is where it's safe to cut to. And like I said before, I want to make sure I don't take too much material off too fast. So that's pretty good right there. And then I can take the part again, and you got to make sure there's no bumps in your graving, right? That's the trick. And then just put that on and see how far it rides up. And it just kind of rides up to where it was before. It goes up a little further this time. And you can kind of mark this. You can take a marker and mark this, but right now I don't need to because there's still plenty of material to remove. I don't need to mark that spot. I just know it's up here somewhere. And I'll look at the top of that material again and make sure there's no issue. And I can take material away from right where the part was, so there's no bump causing it to go away. Because if you get a bump, what happens is the bump makes you think that you need to remove more material, but in fact you don't. And the bump will cause the... then all of a sudden you go over the bump and bam, the part goes way over, right? So you don't want that. I swore I wouldn't talk so much through this video, but it looks like I am talking a lot. So you see that? So there was a bump there. And look how far up that went. So that's almost up to where I want to ride that part. There's a few things I need to do here. One is I need to undercut where the balance will end up riding. I know the balance fits right up to here, and I know there's a little tiny bit of material left to move it up straight up, right? So I know that I can cut material off of the thicker part to kind of be even with that last piece, and that'll give me that'll be a bit better to fit this thing on. So I'll just remove a bit of material, and I got to turn this around later to undercut it just a bit so it rides flat on the balance staff. Let me see if I can remove some material here. I may have to flip to my other glasses soon, but I'll show you where I'm at now. I think I can remove a little bit more material right at the base here, because then that'll get the balance right up to the snugging right up there. And it doesn't take much material before all of a sudden the thing is loose. And you don't want to have to recut the balance, because it just doesn't take much when you're spinning this off, right? So just spin it and clean it off with your finger, and then ride the balance up again. And so right now I'm all the way to where I want to cut for the balance itself, right? So, and I'm looking at the thickness of the arm of the balance here, and how much material do I really need to remove, right? To do that, to get the balance to ride on nicely. And I don't want to face this off until I've got that balance almost perfectly in position, right? But I may want to flip to some closer glasses, I'll call them. So far, the old glasses I've been using for years right now seem to be the ones that work the best. So, but I'm going to look at that material right now through these glasses and see where I'm at. Yeah, this is pretty close. I may have a little bit of a taper on that last part too. And then it's basically you're fitting the part now, and you're trying not to just go too fast and overdo it. So There, I got it through there now, and I can see it's almost starting to go up the hill here on the taper, right? So I want to make sure I leave a little bit of a taper there. That way I know I'm not going to have that problem where it just snugs right up really fast. So I'd love this to be the perfect size. So I'll just work on this taper just a bit more to bring it up to close. And I may flip gravers after, because I've got 4 and 2 millimeter gravers that'll allow me to do the final cut of the taper here. So it's fairly tricky. Yeah, now it's riding right up. And I can see where my final cut, the thickness of the balance arm, and where that final cut needs to be. So I can take a little bit more material off here. I've got it tapered ever so slightly here, but I can take just a bit more material off right here, but very carefully. And again, I'm right near the end here. If you screw this up, the balance does not fit on nicely. So that's getting really close to fitting perfectly right now. I can feel the friction. I'm kind of riding up the hill here on that final taper. But I know I've got a little tiny bit more to take off. I'm just being so careful right now. So just look at the top of that part and not talk. It's kind of an art to do this properly, right? Yeah, I can see where it's fitting, and I just don't want to overdo it. So I just I'm very nervous about this part here. It's very tricky. So you just keep cutting and measuring and cutting and measuring and cutting, and or fitting, I guess, not measuring, but trial fitting. That is so friggin' close. I'm worried about there being a bump here, and all of a sudden the bump is preventing me to go on top here. Because I know I can take a little tiny bit of metal off, and all of a sudden it'll be loose. You don't want that. So I think I'll take it off right on the edge here. Like that. And I'm not sure, you're taking like 0.001 millimeters of metal off here because you want it to fit absolutely perfect. That's getting so close to fitting right now. Could theoretically stake that on, but I'm going to take just a bit more off that. Why? Because I'm a brave bastard. Wow, this doesn't give you heart problems, nothing. Well, that's so close to being perfect, it's sickening. I usually spin it a bit here just to make sure that it's grabbing the metal. I'm looking at the top of that again just to make sure I got enough material here to, if I take some off, I don't end up with a big problem. Okay, let's see what this does. I apologize for the length of this, but I'll probably end up cutting the video off at this point in time because there's enough information here for you guys to cut your own balance staff. Again, this is super close to being the right one. I'm kind of looking at where it's stopping here, and you can actually hold on to the balance staff and make a little bit of a line there. And I know there's a bit of a hill there, but I will have a rivet on this thing, so I'm not super concerned. So it's see if I can take a little more off. Doesn't take much to make this thing slide all the way to the end, but you want it to slide close, but not quite to the end. Man, that is so close. I'll take just a little tiny bit more off and then that's it. I think that's got to be it. Hopefully it just doesn't slide right on to the end. But I want friction fit here, eh? Yeah, I think that will friction fit right to the end without a problem. I'll be able to tap that on. So I don't want to take any more off there. So what I want to do now is kind of cut inward to do to make sure that when the balance sits there, it's properly seated, right? Which means I got to do this, which means I got to turn my tip over tool rest just a bit here to give me a bit of an angle here. I think that's all I need to do there. I don't need to have much of a inward cut here, but that should do right there. That should allow me to stake that balance off right to the end. And I want to make sure that there isn't any material blocking that last little tiny bit. This part right there. There we go. So that should do the trick right there. So that'll be able to take the balance now, and I think I'll have no problem staking it on because there's just a little tiny bit of material left. And that's enough to grab the balance. Now what I need to do though is make a mark, because I need to make sure the width of the balance, it's going to go on perfectly with the right width of the balance, right? So that is a tricky part as well. So I want to basically make a mark and see where that rides up. So one thing I can do to do that is I can measure the width of the balance with this tool here, and then just transfer that width over to the part. So let me just change glasses here. I'm always changing glasses. I need to take this times 10 area loop and get a pair of glasses with no lens on it and put that on there, because it seems to be perfect with no lens, and just use the loop itself. So I'm just going to measure this off here, and make sure I get the right width here. How do I measure this? I've got to measure it. It's so narrow. I may need another tool here to measure this. That's not bad there. And that will give me a little bit of material for the rivet as well. So now the question is, when I do this, can I transfer this measurement onto this part here? Because it's going from there to there. There, I can kind of see where that is. So what I'm going to do, very bravely, is cut where that would be. I'm going to cut it right around here. And this is where the hairspring will go on. So let me just cut some of this back here. And now I'm going to be measuring the hairspring and where that goes on. To do that properly, I will need to get my deuxième gauge out and measure that part properly so I don't cut too much away. Hopefully I haven't done that already. I don't think I have, but I need to get the deuxième gauge out and make sure I've measured that properly. Alright, so here's the deuxième gauge, and I'm measuring where the hairspring collet will go on. Look on the other end. It looks like I've got around just under 9. Just under 9 should do. So when I look at this part here, and I look at where I've cut here, I'm at 11. So I got a little bit of material to remove. I'm at 11, which means I can move this material all back to around 10 or something before I start trial fitting the hairspring itself. So one thing I also have to do is I'll rest the arm of the balance not through the hole but on the outside through the base here to see how much material I have for riveting this back on. So it looks like I have enough material, but I can't cut any more away. So I gotta kind of flatten that part out and not cut any more away because it's just enough material to put this balance, snug this balance on, but no more. So I just have to, I got a little bit of a bevel right where that rides on. And just like I said before, I'll take the tip of this, and this is where I'm going to cut to 9, like I said, to fit on the hairspring. And right now it's just at 10, just below 10. So I'll cut that back, and then again slide the hairspring collet all the way up. I don't want that collet to be loose, but if it's too wide, it'll snap the collet. So you don't want to do that either. So what I want to do here is that I'll get more. I want to put one of my other gravers on here because I think I'll get more of a bevel or a cut in here if I do that. I don't want to remove material from this part of the shaft, which is where the balance is sitting. I want to remove it from right there, and the only way I can do that is with one of my other gravers. So, but it's 10 after right now, 12. I'm gonna go eat some lunch and I'll be right back. All right, this is the first fit of the hairspring collet as well. So again, graved it back to get this fit, and now I just have to, it's a 9, so I just now have to move that engraving all the way up, back up to the collet where the rim is for the balance. So that's the hairspring. Just kind of pop that off and put it down, and I'm just going to eyeball the diameter here because the rest of that diameter needs to be the same as this down here. So I got a long ways to go for that particular diameter, so I can cut some off right here at the base. And work my way from the base here all the way up. And again, the trick here is to look at the top of the part, not where you're graving. Once you get the material to kind of move off, then you watch the top. And again, I don't want to go too close to where the hairspring collet ends up residing, because I'll end up it'll be too loose. I can cut that back after, once I get the collet kind of on. So there's one. So I just cut a bit more off, and then I take the this hairspring and fit it on. This thing here is studded onto the watch. It's an old vintage watch. I'm not sure what year it is, but it's probably early 1800s, maybe, if I'm a little bit correct. So there you go. See, it slid right. So now it's right here, and that's kind of almost where it needs to be, except I've left that little tiny lip there, right? So being wise and beyond my years. So, but I want this to be tight on here. So just drop that right straight down. You grab that like this, and so that's already in position. So now I just need to remove a little bit of material from the ramp, from where it goes up, so I can take a little bit off here, and not a lot. Let me just see what that looks like. Now the hairspring collet expands, right, just a bit. But if you try to tries to expand too much. I just had lunch, so I'm starting to sound like Abbott and Costello or Yabba Dabba Doo or some friggin' thing. I'm like, yee-bee-dee-bee-dee-bee. I think that the collet needs to go in the other way, actually, because the higher part is on this side, so it should be going this way, even though it's bent a little bit that way. So you just put that down again and re-grab it, like that. There we go. Because the base would be at the lower part, I'm pretty sure. So that goes on like that, and let me just let go of this somehow and push it on, and then it should go, it's going to go right up here. Now I had it going a lot further before, so I just want to make sure I don't screw this up. Maybe it's just hitting this. No, it's got to go a little bit further up. Now I touched the hairspring, which twisted it just a bit. And I just kind of pushed it back. So we're good. This thing just wants to jump off. It'd be nice to have a collection of hairsprings, but I don't. And I'm not sure, I think I have it on the right way. I should have had a look at it first. Maybe I'll just go back to my video and have a look. So it turns out the hairspring goes on with the fat part going downward, so it was the other way. So it goes on like this. That's not usual. I don't think it's normal for it to go on that way. So maybe the last person who did repair on the hairspring decided to put it on that way. But it is for a platform balance, so that's a bit of a difference. So I'm just gonna see if I can very carefully put this on and see how far up it rides. Alright, so it rides up that far. It's a little bit twisted, and I'm the reason for that. So, but if I just pressed it a bit here, I can probably untwist it. There we go. Now it's untwisted. I wish I could catch this thing properly when I take it off. Just move this out of the way for now. And put my hand underneath like that. That's what I normally do. And then just push it down. And of course it drops again. Drops into the pieces of shards of metal. So I'm just going to move it out of the way here. Like that. And I got to cut a bit more material off of this thing here. So I just have to be very careful as I cut it. And get a different pair of glasses. It's all about the right type of glasses to wear to get close up and dirty. So let's just cut a little bit more material away here. Now I'm going to try this out, see where it sits. I know these videos are not the most exciting in the world, but this just gives you an idea how much effort it is to actually make a balance staff. And repivoting the balance is not an easy job either. It's also extremely difficult, and you got to have a lot of patience to do that job as well. See, it's getting around the corner now, and it's almost where it needs to be, but I still have to take some more material off the fat part. So let me just get this off again. It's better off just letting the darn thing drop like I just did. Otherwise you're fighting it. That may do right there, actually. So I got to grab this hairspring and try this out. Now that went all the way on, which is what I didn't want, but I can actually move the collet in a bit, so it's not a complete failure. But I took a little tiny bit of metal off of that again, and the darn thing went all the way on. So I'm just going to have to compress the collet. I've got no choice. It looks like it's not on loose, which is good. It's on fairly tight. I think I did that last time too, when I made a balance staff. And I just have to compress that collet ever so slightly, and that should solve my problem. So we'll just assume that'll work, and compress that collet. I don't know, I just felt that I could take a little bit of material off there, and I guess I couldn't. But I don't need to start over again, folks, so don't feel panicked. I'm trying not to feel panicked myself. So here we go. There's the balance there. So now I got to make some more marks here. Let me stand this thing up a bit and see where I am with respect to where it is on the measurement side. I did that last time. I think that's why they make those collets, so you can expand them and contract them. Alright, there it is there. And it's funny when I look at this how much material is actually left over here. So what I'm going to do is actually going to shave this back a bit, and that's the collar I have for the collar that I got for the that's going to be used for the balance itself. So I got to shave that back just a bit. So to do that, I use my 2mm graver flat, and I was able to shave it back considerably. And now I need to just make a little tiny bit of an undercut, and that undercut is so that I can make a rivet when I get that balance on. And to make the undercut, I need to take this a little bit sideways here. I'm gonna loosen this up and bring it in a bit more, because I need to come in with the graver at a complete angle here, like that, and then just do the undercut right there. It's a bit tricky. That should do there. There we go. And now I'll just, what I do after that is I got to get the balance here and make sure that I hadn't screwed that up, right? So making a balance staff is, I guess, you've got to be extremely patient when you're doing this. So that's fitting on nicely right now. I can compress that in, and I'm going to lay that against the rim here and just see what kind of a... Yeah, I've got enough material there to pound in an undercut, or pound in the rivet, which is good. So that's good. And then I've already tested the collet, and that the collet's got a crack in it, and there's a reason for that. So I should be able to. They're called spring collet. They're not spring collets, actually, just called collets. And they got a little circular, like a donut with a crack, and you're able to compress it. And I have a tool that allows me to compress that collet, and that should be able to compress it to go on here. If I can't compress it, then I may have a problem. I may have to somehow add material to get that collet to stay on. I don't want to glue it because that's not the right thing to do. But so the next thing to do is actually, I've got that undercut here, so the balance can go on, and then spread the rivet with the undercut. And I've got to work on the end here, which is where the pivot is, and that pivot is 0.19, I believe. And I got to make sure that I've got all the right dimensions here, and where that pivot actually starts is important. So if I get this down like this, just bring the graver in closer here, rotate it so it's in the proper position here. I got to bring it out a bit too, like that, and make sure it's not touching anything because it's pretty close here. So I got to move it back out of the way a bit, and then back, and then square it off like this. This might be actually too far, so I just have to check that with my gravers, and I'll be using smaller gravers for all this stuff here, so that's not going to work that well. It's too small there. I can probably remove a bit of the material with the other graver first, but I definitely need to move this back a bit. So you want to be close enough to prevent chatter of your graver against the material. So that's not too bad there, like that. So what I need to do though is make a mark of where the end of this balance would be, right? So I can make that mark with my 2mm graver, and with the should basically bring the part up as close as I can to the kind of the master, really close. It's wanting to sit down a bit, so I got to straighten this up a bit here and kind of bend it a little further down. It's wanting to sit up, and then you kind of just eyeball where it might sit, right? And I got it right there, and I just need to move it over a bit here. Rodico is really good for this, by the way, because Rodico tends to stay in place a bit. Alright, that's close. I may need to use two hands to do this because it's not wanting to move, not wanting to stay where it's supposed to stay here. So and then you can also measure it backwards from where that lip is, right? That's the other way to do it, and I'll show you how that's done in a second, but I'm just going to do it like this for now. I just made a mark indicating the end of the pivot. Now the other thing you can do is you turn that around like that, and you just clean that up a bit, and you go from here to the base like that, and that's how long that part will be, and so the end of the pivot will be where that part is, which is slightly up from where the mark I made was. So if I go down, I want to just eyeball this a bit. So there's the mark. I made a mark right here, and I'm going to go up just slightly from that mark. So here I'm taking a bunch of material off, just to allow me to measure the distance that I've got here. Yeah, it's got to go in a lot more. And even if I do it this way and I line the base up here with this, go in the back here and then just put this against the part like that. Yeah, it's the start of my pivot is right about, the end of my pivot's right about there. So I got to go up even more. This is tricky stuff. If you measure it wrong, you're at risk of ruining your work here. So I got to go up even more. Why is this? Something's wrong here. I think it just needs to be down a bit. And then tighten that up. And I want to be right around here, I think. So I just kind of cut another groove, and the only reason I'm doing this is so I can do some measuring of where the end of the pivot is. And I'm just going to eyeball this here, and that's almost perfect right there. And just, that's where the base is. And that's almost perfect there. It's a little bit longer, but you want it to be just a little bit longer. So there we go. So that would be the end of the pivot, and then the start of the pivot is just a bit farther out. Right. So let me just face that off there. I'm just going to take the material off right to the end there, and we'll go from there. Okay, now I've got the right size here. Now I've got to form the pivot on the end, and the pivot's, as I said before, it's 0.19 millimeters, which is fairly big for a pivot. So, but it's not. It's not a pocket watch pivot. It's a pivot for an escapement. So in that case, I'm going to remove material to start off with to get me down to a decent size. The balance staff, or the pivot starts just slightly out from where the balance is. So it starts slightly out here. This actually is thinner. If you look at the original balance staff, it basically wants to taper down and then taper again. So it goes way out to taper down. So I can take it out quite a ways to taper it down. And make it maybe say right around here to taper it down, and then make the pivot, just take the material off here so I have a point of reference, right? I'm going to look how close I got to the original. It doesn't really matter because it's beyond where the hairspring is. So it's right there, and actually I'm pretty darn close to where it would be. So that's good. That's pretty good right there. And then I know where I need to start my pivot. It's kind of a little bit ways up, so I'm going to make a mark just so I know where I am. So I'm going to remove a little bit more material here. Not a lot, but just a bit. Yeah, and this part of the balance staff is measured to be, let me look at this here, and I can actually measure this with my deuxième gauge. And that's measured to be, let me grab this thing here. It's actually 5. So it's sitting at 5. So that's a 5. And this guy right now is sitting at about, let me see, where is that marker? It's at an 8 or 7.5. It's about a 7.5. So I think I can bring it down a bit more if I want to be true to the part here. That's probably good right there, and then I gotta make sure I didn't go down too far, which I don't think I did. That is sitting probably at a 6 right now. It's around a 7 actually. So that's at a 7. So what I'm going to do is start my pivot now, and I want to look and see where the pivot actually starts here. So I can measure this here, just flip that around and measure where that pivot actually starts. So it's almost halfway up that shaft. It's a little less than halfway up that shaft. So if I look at the shaft here, it's just short of halfway up, so it's around there that the pivot starts. So what I do is just do a couple of cuts here, and then have another look at the measurement. This is why it takes a while to do a balance stack, because you're continuously measuring and cutting and measuring and cutting. It's not bad right there. Let me just go back here again. That's pretty good there. And I think that's not too bad there. What I think I'll do is I'll start shaping my pivot. And to do that, I'm going to take material off, but I need it to taper down. So I can use, I think, a 4 to start removing material. I just need to see what this looks like. Yeah, so I can use probably a 4 here to start cutting material back. Now I'll just remove material until I get to kind of close to where I want to be, and I'm going to change to a rounded graver to allow me to taper that down. So once you've got it to this point here, then you should take out your Arkansas stone and start working the pivot. Otherwise you can actually snap the pivot off, which is not a good thing. So you want to get it to about this point here and then start working it with the stone. So once you got it to this point here, this is when you want to stop using your gravers and start using a stone to work it down into a pivot. Now I've got my stone out here, and you got to be really careful here. You don't put too much pressure on the pivot here when you're working it. And you want to be able to just bring this pivot down. I might be able to take more material off using the gravers, but then you're at risk of snapping it off. So I also have got a little point here I can get rid of, like that. There we go. And then there's the pivot right there, so I can work that pivot now. And it takes a long time to work a pivot. It doesn't come off fast. It's a lot of patience. So I'm just going to go away and do this. I think the only good thing again is that it's going to be a 0.19 and not a 0.11 or 02 or 0.01 rather, because I've made some pretty small pivots in my time, and this one here is a reasonable size, so it's probably not going to kill me. But I'm not going to videotape all of that. Now I can also use the Valerobe pivot file, Valerobe pivot file. It's got a burnisher on one side and a file on the other, so I think this is the file side. I want to just see how much material I can take off fast using the pivot file. And again, you'll have to hold it extremely lightly, and you want to use the part of the pivot file that's got a rounded on one side. So this is rounded here, so this will remove material and keep the actual curve of the pivot. The stone might work actually faster, but I'm not sure. I'm going to try this out for a second and go back to the stone. I've always used the stone, and it's always been very reliable. Yeah, that's kind of crappy. So that's not working really well. As well, when I use my rounded graver, see if I can find the rounded graver here. That's flat. This is rounded. And when I use my rounded graver, I also have the ability to take off more material a little faster. But the only risk here is that when you're using this is that the graver goes underneath the pivot and snaps it. So at the end of the day, your best bet is the stone. And the other thing you can do is put a little tiny bit of cutting oil on the stone. Not a ton, but just a little bit of cutting oil on the stone. And that may actually help you cut into the pivot a bit better, right? All this stuff is extremely tricky. And once you've got the pivot down to 0.19, which I have, I've measured it with my Burrell gauge here, and it fits into 0.19 nicely. Then I want to leave a little bit more material on so I can burnish it with my burnisher here, which will smoothen it out nicely. So I just want to very carefully burnish the pivot. I don't put too much upward pressure on the pivot when I'm doing this. There we go. And then once I have it burnished, it's all good, and I'll switch cameras and just show you what that looks like. Alright, I think I can put my hand underneath here to get it to focus, but that's kind of what the pivot now looks like. And that's perfect. It's a 0.19 pivot on the end, and I do have to squish the collet in a bit, but that's fine. And now I just start working on the rest of the balance staff, which is not as hard. So here I'm making the part where the roller table fits, and just to facilitate drawing a line, I can grab my graver here, and I believe I should be able to cut a line the width of this base. So once I've cut that, just made a little bit of a cut into the width, I just measure it, and it looks pretty darn good. So that's good there. And then I have to measure where the roller table fits so I can start cutting material away. And again, use my Dusium gauge. You can't do this work without one, trust me. And the roller table will start going on at, I'll say 6. So this is going to go on at 6, and it's just one straight cut to the end. And I need to know where that ends, where the end ends. So if I'm looking at this part here, I've got to get it all the way to where the pivot would be, and in this case the pivot would be way down the end here. So I just kind of drew a line there. Like that, and I'm just assuming the pivot end, and that's kind of where I'll part the part after I carve this down. So I have to carve this down and down to a 6. But what I do here is there's a bit of a taper on this part here, but I can go straight in, like straight down here to start off with. And before I remove too much material, just bring the part back up again and have a look like that. How wide is that? And that, my friends, is the perfect width. I wish I could have the camera in a lot closer, but you've seen me make balance staffs before. So now I'm just going to remove material. I got to taper this here first, but I just want to remove some material here. I can probably use my other graver to do that instead of using this one here. That way I'm taking more material off faster. So I can use this graver here to just start removing material en masse. And just reset my graver here to be a little bit higher. And let me just look at what I got here. may need to be a little bit higher and a little bit over more. So that might do right there. And I just want to see how much bite I get with this graver onto the material. That's not bad. So I'm just going to start peeling away material here and get it down to not necessarily the exact size, but close to anyway. But I want to bring it down, and I want to taper the back of this as well, right? So because I have to, I got to make sure this is the right sizing here. So I think I just took a little bit of the material away here, which I didn't want to, but okay, 2 over. I got to go 2 over and dig down. 2 over and dig down. Is that the right graver? Oh, this will do. So right about here is where I want to dig straight down. I can use my 4 flat for this as well too, because it's going to take away a little bit more material faster. That's the round, 4 round for the pivot end. This is the 4 flat, this end here. And this is going to be able to take away a lot more material faster. I always angle it ever so slightly so it doesn't get caught up. There, that should be good for now to take that much material off for now. Now I just measure the width of this part here, and it's absolutely perfect, right on the money. And now I just want just a slight, not much, just a slight. This thing requires just a slight taper. You can see that. So I'll just taper that ever so slightly. I'll just keep the camera running while I'm doing this, because I want to taper it using my normal triangular graver here. So I can just do this and put a bit of a taper on that. You don't have to put too much, just as. There we go. That'll do right there. And you just want to take the material off until the blued steel blue part goes away, and then you're good. And then I just want to cut more material off here. And I got to remove a lot of material to get it down to a 6, as it was shown in the deuxième gauge. But I won't bring it right down to a 6 because I got to flip the part around and finish it off that way. And you want to make sure your gravers are very sharp so you don't have to put a lot of pressure on here to cut. Wow, so that's pretty good. Brought it all the way down to this level, and I'll just measure this quickly with my deuxième gauge, although I think I've got a long way to go. I may bring my tip over tool rest closer now because there's less material. So I'm at 10 right now, and this thing has got to go down to a 6. So that's quite a bit of material. So I want to be able to move this a bit closer to the work, like that, and that way, there we go. Kind of like this, and tighten that up like that. And I just want to make sure I don't have any material underneath here that's going to prevent that from grabbing properly. And now I can remove even more material from here. I think I got to move it over a bit though. Like that, just a bit. And make sure it's parallel, bacon parallel. And I want to move that down to a 6. So that's quite a lot of material. And if I look at the old balance staff, I can eyeball that and tell you that, yeah, it's got to go down quite a ways, And that's to get the roller table all the way on this thing, right? Which is going to be a job and a half. So soon I want to part this because I don't want to get it too thin, as it might, there's a chance of it snapping off if it's too thin, but I'm going to take a bit of more material off with my 4 right at the edge here. And I think I could actually move this back just a bit. It's a bit too tight to the part. Let's move it back like that, because it wasn't, my graver wasn't resting properly here on the tool rest here. That can cause all kinds of different problems. There we go. Now the roller table will end up way up here, so you want to make sure that you don't take too much material off from that back end. Now I'll just measure this again really quickly and see where I'm at. It's going to be the world's longest video, I apologize, but so be it. And I'm at almost 8. I've got to get down to 6. So I'm actually getting there. Slowly but surely, right? And I think I'll part it in a few seconds. And before I part it, I'm going to see what kind of chuck that I'm going to need to put on this side. So let me just get my chucks out again while I've got the thing kind of sitting there and resting nicely. I can measure the chuck size quickly, right? So I can put a 10 on here and see if a 10 is the right size. Ten is really close. Go down to a 9. Nine's too small. So it's a 10 it is. So that's the chuck size I need now to chuck it up the other way to take material off. But I think I'll take just a bit more off while I got it sitting here. Nicely sitting here in the lathe. I just want to make sure that, again, I'm being very careful so I don't somehow snap the part off before I part it away, right? But I know I can remove a bit of material from here. I think I may want to sharpen these gravers now too, because they look like they're going to need a bit of sharpening. They've been through hell and back. Okay, now I want to measure that again. I've taken quite a lot off. So 6 was my number, and I've got right on the base here just over 6, and up here I've got around 8. So that's perfect. So 6 and 8, that way I can taper that back on again, and I'm going to get my master here and have a look at, see how far this goes for cutting it off. Yep, and I've left just a little bit of material on the inside here to be able to flatten that out as well, like I did last time. And that's looking pretty good right there. That's leaving me enough material on the end for the pivot. So when I cut it off, I might cut it off with a file, because I have a file that I used before, which was perfect for parting. Although a 2 graver, a round 2, I think this is a round 2 or 4 here. This is a good start. Let me get my what do I want to get here? That looks like a 4. I get myself a 2 here, and that's a 2, and see if this is going to help me cut a bit. Another piece of advice: if the graver goes underneath the piece, let it go, or else you'll snap the piece off. So I'm going to get myself a file for parting. So I think this is a file I used last time for parting, and I believe this file can also use for screw heads. It's very sharp on one side, and that should allow me to part it. And what I do when I get close to the parting it, I put a piece of let me see what this does here. Yeah, that's pretty good there. Getting pretty thin in the bottom. Just keeping an eye on it to see if it's bending at all. I'm pushing towards the material, not towards the part. So now I can see it moving ever so slightly, which means it's ready to fall off. But I'd like to control that, so I'll stop right around now. And I'm just going to grab the part and bend it off like that. There we go. And there's what I have so far. That's looking pretty good. So now we just have to chuck that up and work the other side. So now I've got the size 10 chuck in here, and I'm just putting the part inside here, and I'll tighten that up like that and pray there's no warble. So that's not too bad. That's kind of not tightened a lot, it's just sort of hand tight, but I can ride a stick on that like that and then tighten that up and see if that's... So that's absolutely perfect. And I know because I can throw my stick on here like this, I see. Absolutely no movement on the other end, so this is perfectly chucked up. And now that I've got it chucked up on this side and it's nice and tight, I want to basically, there's where I sawed the part off, so it's the perfect length. So I got to make my pivot on the end. That's all basically I got to do, but first I got to get that roller table on, which means I got to go get the roller table. So here's the roller table, and I said before it's a 6. Now this you cannot screw up. Well, you can screw it up, but if you screw it up, it's not easy to fix. You can use your staking set to actually help widen this if you use a certain type of stake, but you're better off getting it to fit perfectly the first time. So I'm going to start shaving material off until I get this to ride all the way in. I'm going to set up my I'm going to set this up first, but first I'm going to do is I'm going to sharpen my gravers really quickly. Now I sharpen them properly the first time with a graver sharpener, but this time I can actually just eyeball it like this and put a little bit of an edge on it. And that's a quick way of, they're carbide, so that they should stay sharp all the way through this process here. So I'm just going to, that's good there. You can see the material coming off the end. And here I'm going to be sharpening on one end here, so, or one edge. So I keep an eye on it like this, hold the plate like this. I just take a little bit of material there. And that should do for that. Did I do this one yet? I don't know, I can't remember. Yeah, I did this one, and I want to do this one here, which is the 2. I think it's the 2, yeah. This one should still be pretty sharp, so. Done. And that's just a quick sharpening. When you finish the job completely, you got to sharpen it all like perfectly. So what I want to do now is use my triangular graver here to take material off of this beast here, and I want to make sure it's the right height. So I'm going to raise that up just a tiny bit, like that, just to make sure I'm comfortable with it. And again, it's just like I did last time. I'll take material off the top, the front part, and then taper my way up. Okay, I went up way too high there. It's just a matter of millimeters. Let me see if this one works here. This also, I'm pretty far away, so I should bring my tip over tool rest a little closer here. That's not bad right there. Just want to move that over a bit like that. Like this here. You want it to be parallel with your part, and that's not too bad there. Let me see how much material I can remove here. That's pretty good. So it's coming off nicely here. And again, I've got this tapered, so I want to take material off the back first and be very cautious about how much material I take off the other end, because if I take too much off too fast, I end up having a problem with this thing sitting on here properly. So it's not going in yet, so I got a little bit more material to take off to get it to go in. I'm using Rodico here, so it'll just jam right into the Rodico when I do this. So let me just take some material off here and be right back. There, you can see the part is up now a little bit, so it's confidently going up, so that's as far as it's going up right now, which means right at that spot there, the rest of it's got to be kind of at that point there. So I can take some more material off, but don't get too aggressive, because I'm really aiming for this part right here, but I got a lot of material to remove up here. So let's just work on this just a bit here. Now I've done that, now I just have to fit it on again and see how far up it goes. Kind of stopping here still. And the thing, you don't want to create a speed bump either, because if you create a speed bump in the material, then you go past the speed bump and all of a sudden, boom, the part goes all the way to the end. So you really don't want to do that. That'll ruin your work. Now I can be very brave right up to about this point here, and then when it gets close to the end here, then I've got a problem. So I do have to take some material off here at the like kind of cut in on it a bit. So let me just get some of this stuff off here a bit, and then we'll go from there. Scaring myself. So let's see how far this goes up this time. All right, so that's quite good. So it's going up pretty far now, right? So I've got kind of halfway point here. And again, I don't think I've got any speed bumps here. I'm looking at the taper and I think I'm pretty good. Oh, no, I got a speed bump. See, there we go. It just moved forward considerable amount because I had a speed bump there. And it went over the speed bump and then forward. So now I'm quite a ways up, and I just have to make sure I don't screw that up and hit another speed bump. So let me just back this off here. There's my speed bump right here. And all right, let me measure this with the deuxième gauge here and see where this is, because I know the part will fit on nicely right up to around here. And that is just 6.5. Yeah, that's just under 6.5, and the end part here is around 8, so I can take some material off of the end part here. But I got to be super careful here, because I'll end up taking too much off, and then you got a bigger problem. All right, let's see how much that did. Again, this is something you just got to take your time with. Sorry about the long video today, but just play it in the background or something, right? That's past the speed bump, and it's up to kind of this part here, so it can go a little bit further. Yeah, I'm kind of right there. I can see where I am. Yeah, so I can take a little bit more material off, but here's where it becomes very touchy, right? And I want to make sure I use my best gravers for this. So I'm going to back this off just a bit, like that, right? And I'm going to grab my 4. See if I grab my 4 flat, 2 flat or 4 flat. I'll grab my 4 flat for now and see whether that's going to get me cut some material off, enough material off for me. So you lower that a bit, and then make sure your graver is kind of parallel with the work. And that's my 4 flat. I'm not sure how much material this is going to take off for me, but let's try to. No, that's not working. I'm going to go for my 2 flat. That's 2 round, 2 flat. There it is there. And just very carefully remove material with this one here. All right, so that's working very nicely. So let me just put the part back on again. See how far up I go. Gets over the speed bump, and it stops right about there. And I said, what did I say that was? 6.5. And where am I at now? I'm at 7, and right here I'm at 6.5. It's friggin' close. This is the part that makes me very nervous, by the way, in doing balance staffs. So, especially when I'm on the radio here. So I'm going to just take a little tiny bit off here again. It's funny, you take just a small bit of material off, and bam, too small. This has happened to me before, and you gotta see if you can widen the hole on the part. I should get rid of that little speed bump here because it slows me down. And I gotta get rid of material right there because that's kind of grabbing it. And yeah, I want to get rid of material right there as I work it up. And I want this to be, I don't want to smoothen this out either. I want this to be relatively like a bit rough so it grabs the part. So once again, I just want to cut away some material right here so I know that, get rid of that stupid speed bump. Now you can see this is going to take you to make a balance staff, a good one, likely 4 hours, if not more, because it's just so much precision work. It's not easy. What do we got here? It's just a little bit of a speed bump there as well, and then it stops right there. Yeah, that's the stupid speed bump right friggin' there. That's hanging it up, as they say. Let me put my other glasses on and see what the speed bump looks like. Thanks for hanging in with me here. Yeah, that's a much better view here, so I can get in nice and tight here and get rid of that speed bump. That's really close right there. Really close. That's going up pretty far, pretty fast. You can almost stake that on, but you don't want to have it... I want to get past, there's a point right there that I want to get past, and point of no return. There's a point it's kind of right here that I want to get past this point right here. It's just so easy to go too far. I kind of did it a bit with the collet, but that's adjustable. Yeah, I really want to get past this point right here. And that'll allow me to pound that thing in and provide enough friction there to let it go all the way up. Alright, let's just get rid of that bump right here. See if that did it, or if I'm screwed. I want it to ride all the way to the top there, and then, yeah, I think that's good. I think I got it this time. So that's almost right to the top. Now the thing is, let me just measure how far off I am, because I want this to be able to be friction fit, and I know that if you pound it up it could be friction fit, and if you take too much material off, all of a sudden, bam, it's no good again. So I measure it right here, and I keep grabbing this thing upside down, so I measure right here, and I've got exactly 6. And then I measure it up to the top here, and I've got just under 6.5. So I think that should suffice. I think I can stake that on without a problem. But one thing I do want to do first is not face off, but just put a little bit of a bevel on the inside of this thing, just a bit, right? Because I want to do this just a bit. Like this. Not sure if that'll do or not. Let me get the other part and have a look at what I got. Still looks like I could take a bit more material off this. Just a little tiny bit. Just a little tiny bit. How am I going to do that? Let me think. If I put this right underneath the piece, can I do that? I can. All right, put that right underneath there. And then if I use my 2-flat graver and just cut it in like this just a bit, that might do it. So I'm going to switch glasses because this is precision work, folks. Precision work. Good there. That's not bad at all. Turn that around. Get this glasses out of the way here. Turn this around, turn that around, tighten that. Don't tighten this. And tighten this. And then again, I want to make sure this is perfect. Ooh, wrong side. I think that is good. I think that will do. Let me put this on again and make sure I didn't screw it up too much. It shouldn't go all the way to the end here. Theoretically, I should be able to stake that on. Theoretically. Got a little tiny bit of a slope there. Just so afraid of frigging this up. Let me see what that looks like. That's 2. Is this the one? Nope. This is the one. So it's that little tiny bit of a slope. There, that's good. Oh my God. Sorry about this long video here, but this is real time how much time it takes to do this job. This is not easy when you're friction fitting parts on a balance staff that you've constructed. It is not easy. So it should be able to pound that in, I'm hoping. We'll see later, right? So I got it that far. And I'm looking at the slope here. Friggin' Jesus, I could take off just a touch more. I want it to be friction fit, but I don't want it to not go on. Oh, this is killing me. It's killing me, man. Killing me, I'm telling you. All right, that's almost all the way on. It's leaving me about the width of this table to punch it on the rest of the way. So that's perfect. That's all I'm going to do, okay? I'm giving up. And now I've got to make the pivot on the end. So let me just throw this in the bucket, and now I've got to complete the pivot on the end, and that shouldn't be that hard a job. Well, maybe it is, I don't know, but not as hard as doing that tapering. So if I look at this here, I look at where I am here. Oop, wrong side. Look at where I am here. I face this thing off, so yeah, I'm just going to make the pivot on the end. I'm just going to do exactly what I said I was going to do. Make the pivot on the end, and for that pivot, I can start that pivot off with a 2, I think, because I want the pivot to be right on the end here. I've taken about enough material as I'm comfortable taking off. Now I need to have my my rounded, that's my two round flats, and now I need to have my rounded so I can kind of make the slope of the pivot here. All right, so that's that, and now I think I just need to attack it with the stone. If I look at the other pivot, again as a reference, wherever that is, it's right here. If I look at this other pivot, I know that I've got quite a ways to go to get this shape down, but it's not too bad. So if I look at this part here, and where that pivot would have been, it's about in the right place. So given that I faced this off before to make it right, so I'm going to get the stone out now and start working it on the stone, and then once I've done that, that'll be the end of the video. So just like I did last time, I'm holding a Arkansas stone here. I hold it at a bit of an angle, and that's to respect the cone shape of the pivot, and just go back and forth like this. And I run the lathe about that speed. I'm not sure if I can tell what speed that is, but I keep an eye on it. Also keep my back finger kind of touching the Arkansas stone so it kind of stays on. And that allows me to work it nicely. And I can rotate the stone a bit if I want to work the front of the pivot or the back, where the, because I want the pivot to be a 0.19, but it's got to be 0.19 for about, I'll say 0.3, I think 0.3 of a millimeter going upward. So it rests inside of the jewel setting, or the jewel itself, right? So I work it up like that. It takes just time to learn how to do this properly. It's time and patience. So I've got to make another one of these, not tomorrow, because I'm busy tomorrow at a convention, but probably maybe Friday or on the weekend I'll start working on that. So because the other one, same situation, it's a balance, it's a platform balance that needs a lot of work, right? So clean that off and have a look at what I've done. Not bad, it's taken nice material off. So I'll be back with the final product. There, I think I got 0.19 on this pivot as well. And now I've got to, yeah, that's nice. When you measure your pivot, you got to make sure that you don't twist the device, because that either snaps the jewel off or it'll snap off the pivot. So now I can use my burnishing tool here and smoothen out this pivot nicely. So let me see if I can get the rounded end here. There it is there. And just very carefully perfect. So that's that, my friends, is a balance staff. So I just need to stake that up now. I'll show you what it looks like in 2 seconds. I can jab this into the balance staff like that while I loosen this up, and then I can carefully remove it from the collet like this. And then I got to put some glasses on. So I've been at this for 4.5 hours almost to get this done properly. So it's not an easy job. It's probably One of the hardest jobs in watchmaking, I think, is making a balance staff. So now I've got to be super careful with this thing as I remove it from the just put that down on the mat so I don't destroy it. And let me just adjust the cameras and sweep up the lathe, and I'll be right back. All right, JD here, finalizing the world's longest video. There is the old part, as you can see. This is the part that's got the broken pivot on the back end, and this is the new part. So they're almost exactly equal. I guess if you put them beside each other, you'd see the difference, but you can see the length of the new part here is perfect. And the old part, I had to guess what the pivot length might be, but I think I'm right. So it's also a 0.19 pivot on the bottom too. So there's the two parts right there. And I think that as you saw, it's quite an exercise in patience making a balance staff. So you need to take your time. You need to. Sometimes you just need to do something like this, and it's a humble beginning. So it's going to take you, I think, if you started at 12, I've been at this since probably 10 this morning. I did a pre-op, or some prep stuff on this and everything. And then I started around noon again. It took an hour off for lunch. It started around noon again, so it's 5. Took about 6 hours to make that balance staff. So maybe I could make it a bit quicker if I wasn't chatting away on the video, but it's a long job. It's not a quick job to make a balance staff, and if you screw it up at all, you have to start all over again. So I still have to do a few things. I think that the parts will stake on nicely. I think that the hairspring collet needs to be compressed a bit, which is not a problem. I've got a device to do that. I did a good job on the roller table. I think that's going to fit on very nicely, as will the balance itself. There's going to be no issue staking that stuff on the new balance. So that's going to be my next job for repairing this platform balance I've got, and you can see how much work this takes. So thanks for subscribing. This is a long one today. I haven't made a long video like this in a while, but hope you enjoy it. Please subscribe. Please hit like, share it with your friends, and use it for an instructional video if you want to. So thanks a lot. I'm JD. If you want me to do pocket watch work, just let me know. Winter's coming. I'll be trapped in the house, and my hip is doing really well right now. So thanks a lot, and have a good evening.